Welcome to The Catch Up, a podcast from the Daily Catch where we take you inside the news. My name is Walter Mullen, and I'm the publisher of the Daily Catch.
And I'm Emily Sachar, the editor of the Daily Catch.
Emily, today we need to start our show with a special anniversary message. Do you know who's getting the special message?
Is it us, Walter?
We are. This is our 10th podcast show.
I thought you were going to celebrate our 4th birthday. So we've had a big run of it, I guess, these last few weeks.
Big month. So we just had our 4th birthday, but now this is our 10th podcast. So happy 10th anniversary to us.
That's great. I hope we get to the 20th and the 30th and the 40th.
In this podcast, we discuss stories that have appeared in the Daily Catch. We give you insights into how we put the stories together, offer additional observations, and discuss where the stories may be heading as we move forward. Ready to catch up?
I'm ready to do it.
Speaking of where things may be happening as they move forward, the aerodrome, the Rhinebeck Aerodrome, our beloved local institution, really is not moving right now. What's going on there?
Yeah, so you can imagine after coming off the terrible accident last October in which Brian Coughlin, a pilot and board member, longtime actor also at the aerodrome, was killed, the aerodrome was really psyched to get this season's medley of shows off the ground, no pun intended. And they've run into, again, no pun intended, terrible headwinds with the Federal Aviation Administration. What actually has happened there is they have 3 different what are called air bosses. And these are the people who, on the ground, keep the show running. From a safety perspective, they're not the actors, they're not the announcers necessarily, but they are the people who really keep the show moving. And they have to have safety protocols that they've passed, and they need to be specifically licensed for the task that they do at the aerodrome. All air shows have air bosses. So you can go see the Blue Angels, you can go see the Thunderbirds, those large shows that you might see at Stewart Air Force Base. They also have an air boss. It doesn't matter how small or how large the show is, it must have an air boss. So the aerodrome uses 3 different individuals, and 2 of them saw their licenses expire, and they needed to have those renewed. They had all the mandated paperwork in by February, and they couldn't imagine that they wouldn't come back on time with the certifications that were required. But lo and behold, that's exactly what's happened. So planes were grounded 2 weekends ago. They were grounded this past weekend. And I talked to Tara, the woman who runs the aerodrome, and she said they're still not sure what's happening for this coming weekend. They usually make a call on Wednesday. So it's a very unfortunate situation because the season is short. It runs from June to October. And there are other substitutes that they could have gotten in place had they known, but they didn't do so. So now they're scrambling. And she told me last night late that they're hoping to put in an appeal to the FAA early this week and hope that they can streamline and get this done. Meanwhile, there's a 3rd air boss, Walter, who is already licensed, who works for the aerodrome, but he's been on a family emergency in Florida. So it's not clear when he'll be back either. So there's no one who can run the shows.
Are the delays coming from the FAA, are those tied at all to cuts that the administration has been making?
We don't know. All we know is that the Rhinebeck Aerodrome is apparently in the same queue with the very large, multi-thousand people attendee shows, the ones that bring in those big F-18s and so forth. So they're in the same queue, and that has to do with some consolidation that was done several years ago, so before the Trump administration. So it doesn't appear that it's because of cuts at the FAA, at least not according to what Tara has told us. But needless to say, it is an administrative snafu.
Does an air boss function almost like an air traffic controller?
It's yes and no. They're not using the same kinds of techniques that an air traffic controller is using. There's not the radar and so forth that those planes are being used in commercial aviation. But they are monitoring where the planes are at any given time, who's ready to take off, who's ready to land. So it's the same kind of role. It's the same kind of job. And it's something that's done for crowd-pleasing kinds of shows. It's not it's not really a safety maneuver per se, the way you'd see at air traffic controllers.
So is the aerodrome open and planes are not just flying, or is it closed?
Yes, the aerodrome is open. They have a wonderful museum there, but they really rely on these air shows that run Saturdays and Sundays to support their bottom line the whole year round. And I should mention as well, Walter, that it's not only the nonprofit aerodrome's bottom line that's being impacted, but it's also impacting tourism in the area because people plan to come in to see the aerodrome. They go to restaurants, they may stay over one night. And now that the aerodrome ticketing is canceled and there's no shows going off, it's having deeper and more long-lasting impacts than what one might expect. So it's a very serious problem, and it's also a morale killer, right? The shows this year, the whole season was going to be dedicated to Brian, and they want to get that medley of performances off the ground.
The shows are incredibly fun. I've been a couple times, and they're very old-fashioned and corny, but they're really fun.
They're really fun, and there's always a little bit of something special at the end, a little dramatic moment at the end. So it's fun. It's a great way to spend a weekend, and hopefully they will get their sequence off the ground, if not this weekend, then soon thereafter.
I did a ride in one of their open biplanes about 5 years ago. It was incredibly fun.
Incredible. Noisy, right? So
Noisy.
loud up there. Oh my
Noisy,
God.
but it's just
So beautiful.
it's a fantastic experience. So
Get to see those beautiful estates as you ride it down the Hudson River and they turn around right around Route 199 and come back up. It's really spectacular and not that expensive, like a special treat for a special date day.
yeah, exactly. So I will know on Wednesday if they're open this weekend.
That's right. They usually make the call, and you can check out the Rhinebeck Aerodrome Facebook page or go to their website. They're announcing those updates easily there. And we'll, of course, be paying attention to it ourselves as well.
So it's just a day-by-day thing from their point of view, waiting for this certification.
Yes. Yes, exactly.
So let's move on. Let's go from airplanes to boats, and let's talk about the current status of the Red Hook Boat Club possible takeover.
Yeah, I was hoping, Walter, we would have one episode where we wouldn't talk about the boat club. We could take a break. But apparently that's not the way it's going to be this week. So we got some news last week that the boat club has made an overture to the town. And specifically what they've offered is what they're calling limited access to the boat club's boat launch. So, of course, the town has proposed taking over the boat club by eminent domain and getting access to that full, 520 feet frontage, which has a little bit of a park, a playground, and so forth. But specifically, the boat club is talking now about the launch, the boat launch. If that's the reason that you might want to go to the boat club, they're offering that to the public through the town. And they had an interesting line in their letter. They said, quote unquote, I'm quoting Commodore Richie Ross, "We're offering a way out. We're offering a lifeline. We hope you'll take it." So I'm not sure exactly what that means because the terms are not laid out. It's not clear when this access would be available, whether it would be certain times of the day, a certain number of people, how people who own boats would get their boats down there and so forth. Right now, there's a gate in front of the boat club. You need a special lock, sort of a special clicker to get in, like a garage clicker. So all of those logistics would have to be worked out. But it is an overture to the town. Now, what the town has been saying is, boat club, you come to us with your proposal. And what the boat club, playing their own version of cat and mouse, has been saying is, no, you come to us. You're the one who's trying to take us over. You come to us with your proposal. So we don't know. We haven't heard back yet from town supervisor Robert McKeon as to how he is accepting or taking in this overture, this offer. But hopefully we will know sooner than later. The boat club, you may remember, has, or the town, I should say, has until roughly the third week of August under this eminent domain proposal to make a decision. Once they held the public hearing in mid-May, that clicks off a 90-day clock. And by then, at the end of that, they have to have made their decision. They have to have recorded a vote, or they start all over again. The boat club is asking for those conversations or that proposal for eminent domain to be tabled, to be moved off the grid, out of the river, not consideration, while they talk about any proposal to do this public-private partnership that has been in the ether since the get-go.
Do we think the public-private partnership was always the town's goal, perhaps, and the eminent domain was just a way to force their hand?
It's really hard to know. We're not inside the heads of the supervisor or other people on the town board to know. Mr. McKeon says that this was always his intention, but it's not been until the last couple of weeks that we've actually seen anything in writing. So there may have been informal, running into somebody at a party, running into somebody at an event, somebody saying, hey, we'd love to have a partnership with the boat club. But until you actually put it in writing, and even now, until you put a formal proposal in writing, it's hard to really assert that there is anything serious underway. And of course, the boat club's contention is, why should we put a proposal out there? We're happy with the status quo. We like the way we're running things as is. Why should we put a proposal together to you? So as I say, I think of it a little bit as a game of cat and mouse, and we'll see who makes the next move. Now, I also want to mention, Walter, there's some other interesting news that surfaced with the boat club. So you may recall that the planning board has the job of reviewing the eminent domain proposal against the local waterfront revitalization program, which is a many decades old program to try to monitor and guide development along the waterfront. There are 44 tenets or 44 policies that are part of that LWRP, and the planning board took upon itself, at the request of the town board, to review the plan, such as it were, against those LWRP policies. And they came back last week with a written document that asserted that on 6 of the 44, so what is that, about 1/8, a little over 10% of the policies, are not aligned with the proposal to take over the boat club by eminent domain. And in particular, they cited among those 8, there were 2 sort of really surprising ones that we hadn't heard before. One of which is that before the town would move in to do anything like this, they have to ensure that they are not killing competition. So it would seem to the observers, and it seemed to the planning board, that killing the boat club by taking it over by eminent domain is eliminating competition. So this is one new, very important part of the assessment that's coming into the project from the planning board.
What does killing competition mean in this context?
Well, it means that there is something available to the public that is no longer available to the public, or it's being supplanted with something else. So it's not enhancing, it's not adding a new possibility. In this case, it would be taking over an existing possibility. At least that's how the planning board asserted it. Now, you could argue, well, right now there are 100 members to the boat club, and there will be access, if the town succeeds, to 11,000 people. And that's opening it up in a way that it hasn't been. But the planning board did not assert that particular view of it. They felt that the actual facility is going to be supplanted. So that is not enhancing opportunity for the townspeople of Red Hook. The second point that they said is that they needed to see much more evidence of a real demand for using a property like the boat club. And they feel, the planning board, that that demand has not been adequately articulated by the town. So we've heard all kinds of other things. We've heard other arguments previously, like there are other places to put a boat club if you wanted to. We could consider the Tivoli waterfront. We could consider Heron Point, which is a little set of properties just north of the boat club. But this is the first time we've heard these 2 new ideas articulated and criticized by the planning board. So the boat club continues to be very much out there with news, new information, and we'll be continuing to follow it super closely, Walter.
Explain carefully, what does this feedback from the planning board, how does it impact the timeline of the eminent domain procedure? What does it mean?
Really good question. And I actually have not succeeded in getting a consensus on what it means. The planning board is an advisory board to the town board. So many people say the town board can ignore this advice. The town board can ignore this conclusion by the planning board. But we have to remember that the boat club is in both federal and local court. And this analysis by the planning board could play into their hand and could be a successful and helpful new bit of information with their lawsuits. So we don't really know what it actually will mean, whether it will slow down that timeline, whether it just will slow down the timeline in a practical sense because maybe the town goes ahead, but in fact then a court says, whoa, time out, not so fast. So we're just going to have to keep our ears to the ground and stay on top of this.
So the pieces to watch on this chessboard, as it were, are the lawsuit in federal and local courts, the feedback from the planning board that happened last week, and then this overture from the boat club for access to the landing.
Exactly, to the boat launch. And we'll be watching to see what the town's response is. What's the next letter that goes out? It's gotten very interesting to read letters going back and forth between the town and the boat club. Maybe the next one will be longer and we'll have more details. So read it in the Daily Catch. We're on top of it. Follow up with us.
So let's move on to our next topic, which is going to be the Beck Hook Pride event, which took place yesterday in the village of Red Hook. And for those people who don't know, this is Gay Pride Month around the country and around the world. And Beck Hook, obviously, is the combined Rhinebeck and Red Hook gay and lesbian pride festival.
That's right. So it was a very interesting event this year for a couple of reasons. First of all, the parade was the largest we've ever seen. This is the third year of Beck Hook Pride. It started in Rhinebeck in 2023 and moved to Red Hook in 2024. And I'm told that Karen Smythe, the village mayor, really wanted it to continue in Red Hook. She liked the idea of the parade coming down West Market Street. Yesterday, it was very cool in the morning. That parade had over 400 people, bands, a small band, I should say, or music, lots of people, kids in age from tricycle age all the way up to advanced senior citizens. It was really a sight to see. Lots of rainbows, all of that. Then they came down West Market, they turned on South Broadway, and then made their way into the village parking lot, where there was a huge array. The whole thing was just packed with people tabling for different events and causes. There were workshops on everything from binding your breasts to gay storytelling and queer storytelling. There was food. There was bands playing all day long. And there were some really interesting speeches. So on the one hand, we had a great celebration of queer, lesbian, gay identity, but we also had a nod to the difficult time in which the gay community feels it is situated under the Trump administration. And I'd like now to play a little clip that I took yesterday from Kim Bradley Ricard, who's a member of the board of Beck Hook Pride and one of the organizers of the event.
We find ourselves in this unbelievable time and administration where our own identities are at stake and at risk. And I want to say this very clearly. Being here today is an act of courage and an act of strength. So thank you all for being courageous today with us. And it doesn't matter if you marched, if you want to dance on the dance floor with our DJs and performers, but just being here to take it in really means the world to a place like Red Hook, because we really deserve to be seen and heard.
So that was a very interesting comment from Kim, and it does sort of capture both the joy and the sense of foreboding that you talked about, Emily.
Yeah, and I interviewed people all afternoon. I also talked to Michelle Munoz, who's the current acting president of Beck Hook Pride, about, on the one hand, the great joy that we see looking around Red Hook, or that many see looking around Red Hook, especially the participants, and feeling that they have a welcome home in which to share their identity. Marginalized communities finding that in Red Hook. Seeing organizations like, or retailers like Mega Brain Comics, which really welcomes the gay community, has a whole lot of events for the gay community. Another organization, or another mention, was to Red Hook Responds, which has galvanized people in support of another marginalized community, people who are food insecure. And there were comments from people about the way Red Hook is becoming, if not has already become, a central hub for this kind of mood.
So even though the parade took place in Red Hook, it was obviously a joint celebration between Rhinebeck and Red Hook. And so
very much so. Yeah, let's talk a little about that. So the parade and the project actually started at that really important church down in Rhinebeck. They were the ones who offered, Rector McKeon offered the church as a centerpiece, and that's where the parade and the project were initially born. And yesterday it was really wonderful to see Rhinebeck Village Mayor Gary Bassett and Vanessa Bertozzi, who's on the village board, marching right at the front of the parade, and to see politicians who cross the communities right there. So it's very much a project that is anchored in both communities. And I think that's something that we can also celebrate. Something like Red Hook Responds now touches both communities. Mega Brain Comics started in Rhinebeck, moved up to Red Hook, reaches across both communities. So the two, I think, are really linked arm in arm here. And that's a really wonderful thing. The volunteers come from both communities. And in fact, there were volunteers from communities on the other side of the river. There were people tabling and organizations tabling from Kingston and Poughkeepsie. So that was really interesting to see too.
Do we expect the parade will remain in Red Hook, or will it go back to Rhinebeck and go back and forth?
I don't know. Parades are very complicated to organize, and there must be something that has made it a little bit easier to host the parade itself. Village organizer, or I should say Beck Hook Pride, say that 10 times fast. Beck Hook Pride organizer Michelle Munoz told me that it's also really nice to have that facility, that parking lot just works well with the integration of the parade. But, we know that Rhinebeck has wonderful facilities too, like where the farmers market is. Of course, the farmers market is on Sundays, so that would not have been an easy place in which to hold and host a Sunday event. So it's really nice the way both communities are using their own resources and galvanizing them together to come up with a project like this.
If listeners want to see some photos of the event, where do you recommend they go to see those photos?
Thank you so much for teeing that up for us, Walter. Yeah, we covered it. We have a great story. We also have 2 different slideshows. They're sitting on the same story, and they're out this morning. You can see them on our website. So we hope you will. And we also will soon, very shortly in the next few hours, have an Instagram video up presented by our summer intern, Emma. So she'll be doing a lot of great work for us in the next few weeks.
Fantastic. So before we wrap, I just want to do 2 quick follow-ups to past stories. The Red Hook Town Board election, there was no news this week. No news about the caucus, no news about the invalidation.
Oh, I'm sure there will be soon. So the invalidation did take place. It would happen very quickly. Apparently, it was less than 1 minute. We had predicted that would take place. That was on Wednesday. We're still waiting for the new date of the next caucus. So there will be a new caucus. That's been announced, and we covered that last weekend. We don't know where, and we don't know when, but it must happen sometime before July 23rd because the deadline to report the results is the 24th of July. So we'll have more for you on that for sure.
We'll probably hear something this week, wouldn't you imagine? Because July 23rd is not far away.
That's right. Very, very soon. It's because they have to tee it up no less than 10 days in advance. So we're coming up very quickly on that one. And Walter, we also want to make sure people get out to vote today, Tuesday. June 24th is the primary, the last day to vote in the primary election for District 20's seat in the county legislature, pitting Troy Haley against Christopher Munn, a very contentious Democratic primary, which we've also covered. And we will have a story as soon as results are in. I will stay up the night until the Dutchess County Board of Elections reports the winner. But before we can have a winner, we have to have people at the polls voting.
And remind listeners again about the date and the time.
So the date of the primary is today, June 24th. We're taping on Monday, but by the time this is out and available, June 24th. Polls are open from 6 a.m. to 9 p.m., and you should know where your polling place is. There are 3 in Red Hook and 1 in Rhinebeck.
Good, wonderful. And one quick follow-up. So on last week's podcast, we talked about the other rumor about the ICE raid at the Red Hook barbershop, which turned out there was not a raid, but we ran a story about it and we talked about it last week. There's a silver lining to this story. I never knew the Red Hook barbershop was there. And this weekend, I was in need of a haircut. So I went to the Red Hook barbershop and got a fantastic haircut. And they were very busy. There were a lot of people there. So kind of a silver lining from that story.
I'd like to think that perhaps our writing about the barbershop brought them some business.
I hope so.
Yeah. And you look great, Walter, I should say. You look just debonair.
Thank you. We should tell listeners we record this on a Zoom call, so Emily can't see me.
Good to see you. Yes.
So let's wrap up with Ask Emily and Ask Walter. You go first with your question for me, Emily.
Okay, so my question for you, Walter, is I know the Daily Catch reported several days ago that we were the recipient of a very nice grant that will assure our longevity for several years ahead, maybe many years. It makes me wonder, what does your job as a publisher look like now with that grant in place? And why is fundraising still important to the Daily Catch?
Good question. So we did receive a very nice grant from the Online Journalism Project, which is going to help us to grow and expand our newsroom. So for the rest of the year, in my role as publisher and your role as editor-in-chief, we're mapping out how to expand, and we're going to expand slowly and thoughtfully. We're going to be adding additional reporting resources and additional editing resources. But I want to make it very clear to our supporters, this grant from the Online Journalism Project is only for expansion. So we still have to fund our core operations, and that's how we're sort of pushing the two messages apart. So we very much still need support from our donors and our listeners and our readers. That's going to continue. And this grant money will allow us to grow and expand in the years coming forward.
That's great to hear. And we really appreciate the donations that we receive from our listeners. So
Emily, here's my question for you. It's a bit different. Can you think of a special summer activity that you might do here in the area and could recommend to listeners? Maybe something a little unusual that people might not know about?
Well, this is actually something, Walter, that you told me about. I just thought of this, which is the new splash pad, play pad at Wilcox Park for kids. You actually told me about that a couple of years ago when you first saw them starting to do the construction. And then the construction was held up for the longest time because they were waiting for a part, some kind of spigot that they needed to make the waterworks go off. But I'm told, I've never actually seen it. We've done a story on it. It looked like so much fun. And my grandchildren are coming this weekend, and that's going to be the first place we're going to hit.
That's great.
So that's my recommendation, something a little different.
I live near Wilcox Park, and we should tell people that Wilcox Park is in Mullen. It's kind of just beyond the Taconic on 199, but I live near there and I walk there frequently, and the splash pad is really sweet. So.
Good idea.
So as a reminder, please email your questions to me at walter@thedailycatch.org, and we will answer them in one of our future podcasts. This concludes our 10th episode of The Catch Up. We hope you enjoyed listening. A big thank you to Matty Rosenberg and Jen Hammoud at Radio Free Rhinecilff for their help in producing today's episode. And Emily, once more, happy anniversary to us.
And happy birthday too, Walter. Many happy returns.